Hello and welcome to this episode of the Millionaire Mompreneur podcast. I'm your host, Alexa Starks, and today I have with me Liz Kent, who is an expert in helping moms de-stress, and she's a licensed therapist and loves helping moms and mompreneurs and maternal therapy and helping you de-stress and get your mindset right, and all of these amazing things to help moms. So Liz, welcome to the show. I'm so happy to have you. And I would love to get the listeners your background. Tell us your story, how you got into what you do, and a little bit about who you are.
Yeah, I would love to. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here chatting with you today. So I am Liz Kent, and I am a licensed therapist in the state of Maryland, and I have been a therapist for more than 16 years now, which is always seems crazy to me when I say that out loud. And I worked in a variety of settings. And then when I had my oldest son, who just turned 10, I realized how challenging the transition to motherhood was, and just balancing a very intense job. And so I started kind of getting trained in the maternal mental health world and shifted into doing work directly with moms, anywhere from preconception all the way through parenting. And so just kind of built upon that over, the last 10 years. And then in the last year, I decided to go into do a bit more coaching, which is a little bit more directive and goal oriented for moms who have kind of done some of that underlying work that they might have done already in therapy and are ready to kind of move on to really, really figuring out how to thrive. And so now I'm working specifically with mom entrepreneurs because I now have owned two businesses, the coaching business and the therapy practice, and have 3 kids. And so I have learned some things along the way and used my clinical training and my personal experience to help other moms navigate this challenging balance of owning a business, having babies cry in the background, and when you're working, and all of those things, and being able to show up for my kids. So my kids are 10, almost 8,
amazing.
And 5.
What good ages, and a good age range too.
Yeah, it's really, I feel like we just transitioned into this new stage of parenting where they're all kind of, we don't have a little one tagging along as much anymore. He's out of the diapers, out of the naps. And it feels more like we have 3 kids and can do some different things with them, which is a fun transition to kind of just be able to do that with them. The 10-year-old still wants to hang out with us, so we're kind of trying to take advantage of this time. They're all want to hang out. I told them all they have to stay together trick-or-treating tonight because I'm not sure how much longer they'll the 10-year-old tolerate
There's
that.
totally
So
a really great stage of getting to go and do fun things. We have near us a Legoland and a crayon experience place, and my kids are too young, 2 years old and 6 months old. We're not there yet, but it sounds so fun. I'm oh, it's right there. We could do it. But then it's well, nap schedule and bottles and feeding and baby food. And he gets my toddler's still on a nap.
Yeah.
And so it's eventually we'll get there. Yeah. But that's a good phase to be in where your kids are pretty self-sufficient for the most part. They can get themselves dressed and so
yeah, they can put their own shoes on. I carry a lot less things out the door, not we get somewhere and they're Mom, did you bring my water bottle?
I'm
nope,
picturing those days of just my purse is filled with water and extra diapers and snacks for me, snacks for the kids. Those will be the days.
Yeah. I still don't really go anywhere without snacks for me or the kids. I don't want to get hangry, but yeah, it's definitely a little bit easier to kind of transition. They'll get in the car themselves. They can mostly handle themselves, that kind of stuff. So that does make those transitions a little bit easier.
Right. So they're all in school now,
older, but
those kindergarten. Oh, pre-K.
Yeah, so my youngest is still in pre-K. So I have scheduled him in Monday through Thursday. So, because he'll go to kindergarten next year. So I wanted to kind of have that flexibility to have that day, Fridays with him, that we're still able to. Last week we went to the zoo, and sometimes we just hang at home and do stuff, but to be able to have a little bit of time left with him. But actually, because he's in pre-K and it's not even officially real school yet, I I've done this like cool nature
Oh,
class with him the last couple of years, and it only meets on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. And so I was like, last year I was like, oh, we're not gonna be able to do it anymore because he's transitioning to school 4 days a week. And then I was like, you know what?
yeah.
I own my own business. I can do that with my
Hmm.
schedule. He doesn't really need to be there. He can get pulled for an hour and a half. And so we've done
Aw.
that the last 6 weeks. I just pick him up for like an hour from school and get to do that, which is
Hmm.
really a nice perk of being
Yes,
your own,
I love
that you can
that.
just
I love
work
that.
your
So you
time
have
and
3
plan your.
kids and have had 2
Yeah,
businesses, and so that's a lot to juggle,
yeah,
but like you said, it's amazing to set your own schedule, and if you wanna pick up your kids early, you can. Um, were there any, like,
yeah.
important strategies or tips to managing all of that so that you can spend that time with your kids and successfully run 2 businesses? Any tips or advice you can share?
Yeah, I mean, such a good question because it's so
Yeah.
hard to kind of like navigate that. And I think when you run your own business,
Mhm.
your brain never really fully turns off from work. To-do list never really feels totally checked off, which is different than, some other jobs. And so I think really learning how to
Mm.
set boundaries on your work time. And some of the things I just did like an Instagram reel on this yesterday of like really practical things. Like I have to
Yeah.
physically like close my laptop when I'm done working and put it in a different room. And I try most days to
Ooh,
put
that's a
my cell
good
phone in a
one.
different room when my kids get home from school, just so I'm not like just tempted to kind of pick up and check and, get distracted, and at least have that like little bit of time when they first get home to really hear about their day and be present if they need help with homework, and um, just that if when they're, everybody's coming in from
Yeah,
like a lot of activity for the day, that decompression time for us to just kind of like reset and connect has been really helpful. And I
it
know
is.
that's like, it's so hard when you're working for yourself because
Yes.
you're like, I could just get one more thing done. I could just get one more thing. So I've started trying to use, my therapist actually told me about this. It's called the
5217.
5217 rule. Apparently, yeah, apparently research has shown that our brains are the most like productive and effective if
Ooh.
we work for 52 minutes and then take a
Huh.
17 break. I don't know how they figured that out. So I've been trying to do that sort of with like timers and
Mhm.
taking then really intentional breaks. I feel like I'm using the break better. Like I might go take a walk or, do something where instead of just like getting distracted between bouncing between like personal emails and work emails and checking social
Yeah.
media or whatever. And then it feels like you kind of focus in on that work time because you're like, okay, I gotta get this done and this is amount of time. And I try to line that up with like when the school day, when my kids will be getting home or
Yeah.
when I need to leave to go pick them
I'm
up.
gonna give me 1 second. I'm
There's
gonna
no
go rescue my baby real quick. Hold on. Okay. Yeah.
got her.
Down for a nap. Hopefully we'll see how long she takes to fall asleep.
That was
Yeah, no,
quick. That
I
was amazing.
sleep
I'm
trained
impressed.
her at 3 months because she was waking up every hour at night and I lost my mind. I was like, I could not function
Yeah,
during
I
the
mean,
day. So I was like, that's it for sleep training. So
yeah. I think that's like such a good example though of like mom, like what I teach moms is like making decisions that work for you and your family, and like how are
mhm.
you going to do that? What kind of strategies are you going to put in place for your kids and their needs? Because like this is your second kid and maybe the first one didn't have those kinds of sleep issues, but you have to like adjust and adapt as your family grows and changes and your needs grow and change and your kids needs grow and change, and just making kind of like
Mhm.
figuring it out as you go and using your
Yeah.
mom like instinct, like that gut instinct of like, I need to do this because it's really impacting like
Yeah,
my
but
own
being able
well-being.
to I mean, sleep training's hard, first of all, because, like, hearing them cry is
Yeah,
torture. But like
yeah,
you said, I
yeah,
had to do it because I could not function. I could not work on my business during the day. Every second she wasn't needing me, I was trying to sleep, and so nothing was getting done. But
yeah,
it's
yeah,
hard to come to
yeah,
that decision. But I would love from your expertise. So you help moms and you do one-on-one coaching now. So can you give some more
mhm,
examples
yes,
of
yep.
things that you've been focusing on to help mompreneurs?
Yeah, yeah. I was just thinking I was like giving a couple practical strategies, but a lot of what we do is kind of the
Uh,
mindset work around adjusting like our own expectations, because I find a lot of moms who are starting their own businesses tend to be pretty ambitious, like high functioning. They're balancing a lot, they're used to balancing and juggling a lot of different things and feeling really competent in doing a lot of different things. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh,
right.
I can't keep up, you know? And that's like such a hard pill to swallow, I think, for women who have been like pushed to do
Yes,
so
yes,
many
yes.
things for so long. And that so much external pressure then once you're kind of in that role of like, oh yeah, you achieve these things, you can do all these things, you're competent, you don't need help. And I think subconsciously people in our world then, you know, just kind of expect us to step in and do everything. And when you're parenting little kids, like, and trying to run a business, that's just not, it's not
Oh, yeah.
possible for anyone. And so the more women that I work with, the more that I see like we're all kind of in this position of like, we can't do it all, but we all feel like we have to put on this front, like that we are, because there's all these, you know, what we see
Yeah.
on social media and what we hear from other people is
We're
like,
super moms and
we
we
should
do it
just be doing
all.
it all.
And yeah.
Exactly. And so I think like just starting to recognize that and shift our mindset around like,
Hmm.
you don't have to do it all. And it doesn't have to be like, and it doesn't all have to be perfect. And like, what things can you kind of adjust and adapt so that they work for you and they work for your family? One of the things I love to have clients do is a
Ooh.
values inventory where they really like go through, you know, a whole list of things that are great values. Like all of them are good, but
Hmm.
you pick the top 5 that are the most important to you. And then we look at kind of how are you
Ooh, I
aligning
love
your
that.
time with those values? So are you actually spending your time in a way that
Hmm.
is like fulfilling what you want to be
You know what? I'm literally
with your
going to
life?
write that one down. I know for sure my husband and I would love to do that one.
Yeah, it is great to do
Hmm.
with your partner, because then you guys can see, and you might have some overlapping values, and you might have some that are different, and that's okay too. But then some conversation around how are you going to make
Yeah.
you know the shifts in your life so that you're both meeting those values for each
Hmm.
individual,
I
and the
love
ones that
that.
you
I
have like
love that.
joint
And I think you said that
for
you
your
touched on
family.
something really important of the ideal of doing it all. And we see that on social media of these rock star moms doing it all and running a business successfully and having kids and spending time with their kids. And it's very unrealistic. Like I literally teach how to use ChatGPT to moms so that you don't have to work as much, so that you can have it all by doing
Yeah.
less. And so you're redefining what
Yes. Yeah.
all means, right? Instead of doing it all, it's
Mhm.
doing less is now the doing it all and still being successful and still being present with your kids. And I think as moms and mompreneurs, or even if you work in corporate America and you are still have kids, like you have to
Yeah.
redefine what doing it all means to you now and what that looks like, because it's not
Yeah.
working every minute of every day. And I come from corporate America where you did
Yeah.
work every minute of every day basically, you know. And so now
Yeah.
as a business owner, it feels that if I'm not working every minute of every day on my business, it doesn't grow without me. But and that's like this mindset shift that you have to realize is not true.
Totally.
You know, there are more important things in your day, and spending time with your kids or your partner or on self care is important for the whole picture and the long term game as well. But redefining what doing it all
Absolutely.
means is important for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and thinking about like what is your
Mm.
definition of success? You know, my business coach actually always uses the phrase like to get to your
Uh-huh.
happy boring dream life, like that it doesn't have to be this big like
Hmm.
fancy cars, fancy house, big travel plans or whatever, but if your life is just like I want to be content, like having some hobbies
Yeah.
and spending fun time with my kids and like getting some joy out of my business, then that's a great goal. It doesn't have to be like this massive
Yep.
thing that we're working towards. It's like whatever is your goal for success. And so really kind of talking through like what does that look
Hmm.
like for you, and then how do you get there, and how are you spending your time now so that you can get there, and what kind of things do you need to put in place so that you
Hmm.
can kind of shift your time to be able to prioritize those
Yeah.
things because you can't
Yeah.
do it
No, I love that.
all.
And I
Nobody
think, you know,
can.
you touched on earlier, setting boundaries is like really, really important. And
Hmm.
is there anything you can share about how you help
Yes.
other moms sort of set those boundaries or working to achieve a better work-life balance so that they can um, have it all in one single 24-hour day?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I noticed you said you used the
Mhm.
term self-care before, and I like to like kind of use that related to boundaries because I think self-care sometimes we think of that as like going to get
Uh-huh.
a pedicure, going for a girls' weekend or whatever. Those things are great, but that's not really
Hmm.
like sustainable self-care. Self-care is like what are the things that we're doing day to
Mm.
day to protect our own well-being? And I think that boundaries is like a huge part of that. And I think it's kind of like a catchphrase, like where people are like
Yeah.
boundaries, and it sounds like this big scary thing, or like you have to cut off people in your life. And so I remind clients like it doesn't, for one, boundaries
Mm.
aren't necessarily for
It's a good
forever. It might
point.
be for a period of time. And for two, they're not black and white. Like it doesn't have to be like, oh, I have this negative relationship with somebody in my life and I need to totally cut them out and never speak to them again and not have any of my family speak to them again. Like there's some
Uh-huh.
other in between situation. A lot of times this comes up for a lot of my clients with like family of
Mm.
origin or like extended family and like grandparent relationships and things like that. And the boundary might look like, okay, we go to the family party and we leave after two
Uh-huh.
hours. We don't stay all day. Or we go to visit and we only stay for a max of 2 nights and we don't stay for a week because then everybody kind of
Right.
things don't go well after that time. And so that's an example of like it's not a black or white. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. Setting boundaries around like
Hmm.
just saying no to things and feeling okay about that. I think this particularly, I have found this comes up a lot since my kids have become school age and we get like so many
Oh.
requests from the school to like send in things and volunteer for things
Huh.
and sign up for things. And sometimes it's like sports, like every week they have sports signups for somebody to bring snacks after the games. And it's like this constant, like being like
Mhm.
bombarded with requests to like for your time
Right.
and your resources. And I'm all about like giving and, being able to like to do that. But I think it's also okay at some points of time when you're like, if this is a really busy month for you work wise, or just like we have a super busy October because I have
Yeah.
2 kids with birthdays in October and one at the beginning of
Mhm.
November, and you got Halloween and they all play soccer. And it's just like, and so when those kind of signups come out in October, I'm like, I cannot
Mhm.
sign up for any of those things. And in
Right.
November, I can revisit this. Again, like, not saying, like, I
Mhm.
just don't do any of those things, but, like, right now, I can't. Or I've given this example before because my kids' school they go
Oh.
on a ton of field trips, and the parents drive. It's a small school,
Uh-huh.
which is why they can go on a lot, which is great. The first year that they went there, I signed up and went on every field trip, and the second year, I was like, "Oh my
Yeah.
gosh." Like, I like it, but I cannot do every single one, and I only have 2 kids there now. I'm gonna have a third.
That's a lot. That's not I could see
So
that not being
I,
sustainable.
yeah, because it's a long day and it's tiring to like, corral
Yeah. Yeah.
6-year-olds all day long.
I
God
know, I
bless
know.
teachers that do it. But I had my kids are old enough that I could have some conversation around that with them and be able to talk to them
Mhm.
about my own limitations and like what I need to set boundaries on my time so that I can do other things also. And so they were, had some disappointment initially, but also just being able to get them to understand like, I
Yeah.
love going on field trips with you, but I can't realistically go on every single one so that they know it's not just me like not
Right,
doing
right.
it because I don't want to or because I'm prioritizing work or whatever. Um, and so I think the communication piece around setting boundaries, like
Mhm.
when it's appropriate, some boundaries, I think when we set with
Right.
external people, we maybe just do it. Us. But some like within your own, like
Mhm.
with your own kids and your partner, being able to verbalize those things of like, this is my limit
Mhm.
and I can't do anymore. And recognizing that and then being able to tell somebody else so that you're not just feeling the pressure to constantly
Yeah. No,
just
I
take it
love
on,
that.
take it
And
on,
I
take it
think I
on.
love what you said about boundaries can change Because I think we get in this mindset of like,
Mhm.
this is my boundary and it's rigid and this is what it's not changing. But it can change. Like when my daughter goes off to daycare, my whole day is going to look different. And so I can change my boundaries so that they more align with, okay, we pick her up at, we pick her and my son up at 3 or whatever. And then now I've got a new boundary of that afternoon is now more blocked, right? Or whatever it is. And so I think that's a really good, important thing to note about setting boundaries is that they can change. And it's not because boundaries does have sort of a
Yeah,
almost scary connotation sometimes of, yeah.
it does. It really does, and I think we kinda, like, shy away from it, and especially, like, a lot of women were kind of, like,
Hmm.
trained to be people pleasers and to, like, not we don't wanna feel bad to set boundaries or to,
Yeah.
like, hurt people's feelings or to not be able to, like, give because that's what we feel like we're expected to do, and so recognizing that too, that it's like, it doesn't have to be for forever. And like moms
Hmm.
in different stages of life. Like if I see a mom with kids your age like struggling to do something, I can step in
Right.
and like carry something or hold the door while you put the stroller through because I'm not in that stage anymore. And so just understanding that those things are going to shift as our kids grow and we grow and our life changes and there's going to
Yeah.
be differences there. So, yeah, it's good to keep in mind that it's not doesn't have to be for forever. A boundary is really to like just to
Hmm.
protect our own well-being now. And so what do you need now to kind of take care of your
Hmm.
own like
And I like that you
time
said
and
that
mental
that's
health?
more self-care than just going to get a pedicure. Because I'll be honest, when I think of self-care, it is getting a pedicure or a massage. And there's like, I haven't gotten a pedicure in a while, but I would love to. And to me, that is my self-care. But it is much more than that. It's setting boundaries. It's realizing, oh, I've overbooked my calendar and now I'm too stressed trying to do back to back to back to back meetings and I can't get enough work done. And so now my brain is too stressed and my daughter's changing naps and, realizing like, okay, let's scale back and do like one meeting a day or just two meetings a day. But that is self care. That's protecting my mental health.
Mhm.
Right. And
Yeah. And then you might have
exactly.
the room to go get the pedicure in your schedule because set those boundaries on your time, your limitations and your energy. Like I think of when we talk about boundaries, like thinking about our time, our resources,
Mhm.
but like our energy too, and just recognizing that if you're not in a position to be able to like do it or you're doing it
Yeah.
because you feel guilty or you feel like you should, that's not a
Yeah.
good reason to
Definitely.
do it. So, sorry, my dog is like playing with a bone in the
All
background
good.
if you
Hey,
hear
my daughter was
trying
screaming
to
in the
get
background earlier, and now it's your dog. So, yeah.
so that's mom life. Yeah.
um, well, Liz, can
Yeah.
you
So
give some of your top pieces of advice for mompreneurs who may be struggling with balance or, the self care or the mental load of being a mom and running a business? Some of your top expert advice for them?
yeah, I think
Hmm.
other than like some of the things we've already talked about, I think one of the things I've been talking with clients a lot recently about is this mindset shift around like
Hmm.
asking your family, your partner, or your kids to help you, particularly with partners, where it's like this mindset of thinking like, well, they're really helpful, but
Yeah.
I'm still the one managing everything. Well, you're partners, like you're in a family together. Like they're not helping you. You're both in this. And so starting to have some conversation around what that looks like and that it's
Hmm.
not just like all on mom to run everything and having more of a like collaborative culture. And this
Right.
it takes effort and it does take time, but having some proactive conversations. And so one of the things that my husband and I have done for like
Hmm.
gosh, 7 years now, I think, is we have a weekly
Oh.
meeting where we like, um, we start with kind of like what are some things we're thankful for, what are things that we're praying for, what are things that we're just
Hmm.
like struggling with and like parenting our kids. And it's like a check-in,
Hmm.
but it's not like a logistical check-in. It's like how are you doing? What are you struggling
Hmm.
with, like, in your workday? What this thing came up with our kid that it's kind of hard or they're in this new routine, and how are we gonna get on the same page with how we're both addressing it? And having that proactive time that we know we're going to sit down every week and talk to each other has
Wow.
been, like, such a game changer because then if I have things that I feel like are falling too much on my plate or whatever, I know that that's a
Mhm.
time where we're like both in sort of a safer space. I'm not just like
Right.
throwing it out at him because I'm annoyed in the moment or whatever. I can bring that to that time. And I've said this recently, and like a couple people were like, huh, that's really interesting. And I hadn't really thought about it, but he and I, when we do this talk, we sit on our bed and we like face, like we're
Mhm.
looking at the TV, but the TV's not on. And I think some of that is like just
Huh.
not looking directly at each other. Like you would in like an argument feels a little bit less
Uh-huh.
like intense and like it's a little bit easier, like less vulnerable maybe. And I find this, I actually do walk and
Mm.
talk therapy sessions with my therapy clients. And I find that too is like it's the same kind of thing where you're walking next to each other, but you're not
Ah.
looking directly into someone else's eyes. So it feels like you can kind of put some things out there
Huh.
that don't feel as
This
scary.
interesting.
Um, and that's, yeah, that was just like kind of a byproduct. We
Literally
just like
writing
happened to
down
do it like
weekly
that. But
meetings,
we,
weekly
yeah.
check-ins with hubby.
Yeah. And we like tell our kids, I mean, we used to do it right after our kids would go to bed. Now that they're getting older, they're not going to bed early enough to do that. But they know, we just tell them, we're just like, this is
Mhm.
we call it our prayer time, but we're like, this is our time and you guys need to, stop
Right.
coming in and like asking us things. Like you need to go read in your bed and, whatever. So that
Mhm.
is kind of like the sacred time that's like blocked out in our schedule. And I think that that's really helpful in just like learning to self
Mm.
advocate for our needs as moms because we get that pressure of like we've got to take it all on,
Yeah.
like we talked about before, and we don't have to do it all. And as your kids get older and they can be more involved, like my kids have a fair amount of like responsibilities around the house, and when I talk to them about why they have that, it's because I
Mhm.
can't do all of those things and then also do
Yeah.
stuff with them. And if they're asking me like, read me this chapter, or come play in the backyard with me, like, well, if I'm the only one folding everybody's laundry, I'm never going to get outside to play with you. Like, it's
That's a
just not
good
going to
one.
happen. So again, like that conversation with everybody and kind of fostering that this is
Mhm.
like a collaborative process of us like working together as a family so that it doesn't just everything doesn't
Yeah. I
rely on
love
like
that. I
mom
do
running
feel
the
like that
show.
would probably take practice to get really good at.
It definitely takes a lot of practice. One of the really simple strategies that I give to like start this is start by
Hmm.
creating a shared email address for you and your partner and using that email address when you register your
Hmm.
kids for daycare, school, activities, doctor's appointment for the doctor's office, anything like that, because then everything automatically comes to
Ah.
both of you. And so it gets both of you in the habit of like seeing the number of emails that
Yeah.
come about coordinating things for like life with kids. And so that has been a really good way that like my husband and I do that. We've done that since we've had kids and it just makes it so much easier to like then we both see the things. I'm not the only one
Mhm.
holding the information in my head about
Right.
soccer's on this field tonight or tomorrow is crazy sock day at school or
Yep.
whatever. And that we can and again, it takes practice and kind of owning like your own which kind of things are you going to sort of be more responsible for and which things are you going to be more responsible for. But because moms
Yeah.
are always the default. I just got a text from the head of school from my kid's school yesterday about something she wanted to talk to me about that happened
Oh.
that like my daughter was impacted. And I was like, but she
Right.
didn't text my husband. And I was like in a meeting and he was like, you should have told her, can you call him about this because you're in a meeting. Um, so we've
Mhm.
had a lot of conversations around that, but kind of starting those conversations of how do we sort of share this load of
Yeah.
coordinating all of these things. Because especially like when they're really little, like your kids, kind of keeping track of
Yep.
like when do you
We
need more
literally just
diapers and when do
ran
you,
into that where my husband
when
went to change my son's diaper and he was like, "We're out of diapers." And I was like, "We're not. I already bought some. They're down here. They got delivered yesterday."
yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So kind of like, okay, well, keep a
Yep.
list. Like you can put that on the list too. Having those kinds of conversations, those things don't just like
Mhm.
magically appear in the house. Usually it's mom kind of well, like I think
Mhm.
we talked when you and I chatted before about like you did all the
Yes.
research on like the sleep training and like switching
Mm-hmm.
naps and timing and, having that, like, then how do you talk, where do you talk to your partner in the day
Uh-huh.
about that to even share that information? Because a lot
Yeah.
of it is often moms doing that,
Mm-hmm.
listening to the book,
But I love your
podcasts, and
idea of
all
the
the
weekly
things like
check-ins
that.
because that's a really good opportunity to say, "Hey, babe,
Yeah,
Evie is working on dropping from 3 naps to 2 naps, and so that means this next week she's probably going to be extending wake windows to this and to this, and so our schedule might change around this, and so that is a really good opportunity to
yeah,
have those conversations and get it all out from what's in your head and bring your partner in on it and say like, hey, we're also running out of diapers and this when you go to the
yeah,
store, can you pick up these? And so that's a really good opportunity rather than just
yeah.
on the
Get on
fly.
the same page. Yeah, for sure, for sure. Because I think on the fly, we're
Yeah.
so overstimulated as parents. There's just so much
Mm-hmm.
external stimuli, and then things going through our heads that it's easy to forget, and it's easy to kind of be like, wow, well, can you get diapers, and like do it in kind of a way that
Yeah.
doesn't feel as kind,
Yeah.
frustrated, and like that's normal. Our frustration tolerance,
Mm-hmm.
is lower when we're overstimulated, but kind of figuring out how can you address those
Yeah.
things proactively so that it's not just like spewing out
That's
in the
really
moment
good.
in
That's a good one.
frustration.
Well, thank you, Liz, so much. This has been
Yeah.
amazing. I love all of this advice. I literally took notes on a few of these that I'm going to start implementing with my partner. And can you share your website and if you're taking any one-on-one coaching clients right now for any listeners that may be interested?
Yeah, so I am taking some one-on-one coaching clients. Definitely have some spots before the end of the year, and then we'll
Hmm.
be launching some new stuff in January. So keep an eye out for that. The best way to find me and I share a lot of my tips and strategies is on Instagram, and I'm just at Liz Kent Coaching. And I do have a Facebook group also where I post all my like live trainings as well, and that's Calm Success Mindset Coaching
I love
for
it.
entrepreneurial moms.
That's awesome.
So
Well, thank you,
yeah,
Liz. I'll put all that in the
yeah.
description below as well. So if anyone is interested in that, you can find it in the description. And also, don't forget, Mompreneurs, you should always join our Mompreneur Mastermind community. We have weekly networking lessons and weekly lessons on how to use ChatGPT. And I'll have that in the description as well below and where you can find me. But thank you.
Love that. I didn't even know about ChatGPT until I
It's so
started my
amazing.
coaching
I
business.
literally
So
used it
that is
this
like
morning to
such a
ask
game changer.
for a recommended schedule for my daughter on like now that we're doing 2 baby food times a
Amazing.
day and bottles, and now she's dropping from 3 naps to 2 naps, and it literally spit out like a full schedule. And I was like, whew, one less thing to think through.
Perfect. Yes. Yeah. Taking
Yes,
off that mental
exactly.
load of all of that stuff.
Yep.
Anyway, you
Well,
can do that.
thank
So
you, Liz.
great to
Likewise.
chat with you.
Likewise.
All right. Take care.